What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The celestial compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to Celestial Compass. I'm Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, and I'm going to start with a brief update of the astrological forecast for the second half of August 2024, with a reminder that you can find my full forecast for the month and for the new and full moons at Om Times, and at my site, EmpowermentUnlimited.net. You'll find the same forecasts and also my weekly podcast. The middle of August is an extraordinarily challenging and chaotic time that is setting an awful lot in motion. And as we get further into August, a lot of things are going to start to calm down. The Aquarius full moon has an incredibly awakening, liberating, unpredictable streak to it because of the role of quick change artist Uranus. And that we'll see playing out over the rest of the month. By about the 27th, you may get an inkling of what benefits have personally come to you from whatever the shakeups and awakenings and realizations of the full moon of the 19th have been for you personally. We also have a really tight configuration that has forces of expansion slamming up against forces of order and constraint, a square between Jupiter and Saturn, which is exact on the 19th and continues in effect basically for the rest of the month, looser and looser. We will revisit some of these issues at the end of December and then again early in summer of 2025, whatever is coming up for you. You will find that as the week goes on, as we get into the last 10 days of August, things are going to feel like they're calming down. The sun will move into Virgo, which is where Venus already is. So our social mode is already in fix-it mode, healthy boundaries, looking at things from a perspective of how this can be better. And then the sun is going to move into that mode as well. And right about then, Mercury is inching into its direct station, so time may feel like it's moving a little more slowly than we've been experiencing lately. Mercury goes direct, and thousands cheer, on the 28th of August, and right after that, Venus moves into her intellectual home base of Libra, which will change our interactions, our social mode into much more let's play nice, let's talk nice with each other, how can we cooperate, paying a lot more attention to, in some cases, justice, but also how we're saying things and the impact of our words on other people. So, gear shift. Today, I am talking, speaking of Venus and her love of words, I am talking with two authors of a new book called Everyday Magic: How to Live a Mindful, Meaningful, Magical Life. MarieDJones is the author of over 20 nonfiction books, including Visible Ink Press's Earth Magic, Natural Health, and the Afterlife book. A former radio show host, she's been interviewed on more than 2,000 radio programs worldwide, now including mine, including Coast to Coast AM, The Shirley MacLaine Show, and Midnight in the Desert. She has also been interviewed for and contributed to dozens of print and online publications. Her co-author, Denise A. Agnew, is the award-winning author of over 70 multi-genre novels and has collaborated with MarieDJones on several projects, including screenplays. Fascinated since childhood with all things esoteric, Denise is also a paranormal investigator, Reiki master, psychic medium, and certified creativity coach. So, welcome, Denise and Marie.
Thank you.
Hello, good to be here.
Yes, it's nice to finally see you after we've been talking. I'm wondering, how did you two get to know each other? How did you find each other initially?
Oh my God. It was a long time ago.
I think I started pestering Marie online after I read her book that she had done with her father about supervolcanoes, which
Oh my
a
gosh.
fiction story that dealt with a supervolcano in California going off, and I wanted to tell her how much I liked the book, how helpful it was.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a super long time ago. Yeah, that was, I think I just made that connection. And
Yeah, and I remember talking back and forth, a lot, and the fact that Denise was a writer, of course, gravitated towards her, and then we were both really into the paranormal, and then I mean, my mind has no conception of time anymore, but several years ago, I thought, it'd be so great for us to partner and do stuff, and we have just written a ton of stuff. We've done novels and novellas. We've done, well, this is our first nonfiction book together.
Yeah.
And then we've done screenplays, and we sold a script to a Lifetime Movie Network that aired last fall. So we're all over the
Really?
place. Yeah. But it's
What
just
was
so
that
weird because
about?
it was called Secrets Beneath the Floorboards. And it's a classic thriller about a woman whose husband, there was more to him than met the eye, and she ends up being stalked by someone who wants something in the house that she is staying in, but we've written a ton of screenplays. They've gotten really great reviews, and we've placed really highly in a lot of competitions. But it's funny because I never would have remembered about how we first, I just kind of always remember that we were talking.
Yeah.
Well, writers, we tend to do that.
Right. Well, and I
find each other.
I heard Marie on several of the shows that you mentioned that she was on. So I actually was listening to some of the podcasts you were on, I think at least a few years before we actually chatted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what inspired this book? What inspired Everyday Magic? Since you said you've written fiction before, and why did you decide, well, let's move from fiction to this?
It's funny. I mean, we love to write like horror and thriller, and so the way I remember it, and Denise, you can correct me if I'm wrong because my brain isn't what it used to be. I had contracted for a book with Fizzbling Press, and Roger, the publisher, we were trying to find the right thing. And I had pitched them some ideas, and they just, I don't know. And, Denise, I asked, can Denise and I do something? And I don't, maybe Denise, you remember how this idea came to be.
Well, I think we were I think at some point we were talking about different things that we had come across in our own experience of trying to find our own meaning and to, patch together some of those things that we had experienced ourselves that we thought were actually helpful.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we have in our book. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but our personal experiences that we can relate to for each chapter, our own snippet stories. And I think that's one of the unique things about the book that I think I personally really like about this. Yeah. So it's not just telling you, hey, this is how you should do things.
Right. And we're both really positive people. And I think, Roger had wanted to do an empowering kind of uplifting, not necessarily self-help, but, a little bit along those lines. And I do remember I turned 60 when we were writing this, and I was having all these kind of weird throwbacks to when I was a kid. And I would just go outside and just be in awe of nature, or, having these little magical moments that I hadn't had for a long time because I was so stressed out from working and raising my son and everything else. And so it just kind of came naturally. And I think we wrote it pretty quickly too. Once we decided what we were doing.
Yeah, that was well, and I think it was challenging for me. Thank goodness that Marie actually had experience already with writing nonfiction, because I didn't know if it would be more difficult because I'm so used to just fiction.
Yeah.
And so this was like a training ground for me too, to figure out, is it possible for me to contribute without Marie going, "Oh my God, I wish
What did I do? Oh no.
Yeah. I wish I hadn't.
Denise, but you're getting axed.
Yeah, right.
No, it was so seamless. It was scary. But we knew because we had written scripts and we had written fiction, and this was a piece of cake.
So you already had the collaborating vibe there.
Yeah. And I think you have to have that, because I've worked with other people. I won't mention any names. And it's been just awful, And for us, I think we think along the same lines, and the idea of everyday magic kind of really appeals to us on not just a practical level, but an esoteric sort of metaphysical level, because that would be really hard to do with someone who didn't have that kind of mindset.
Oh, it'd be impossible. So
Yeah.
can we start with your definition of magic, because it has a lot of connotations.
It
and
does.
Reading your book, this doesn't fit the witchy shows of the 90s that many people grew up on. So what's your definition of magic?
Denise, you go first. Alphabetical order.
Okay. Well, I'll just jump right out there and say that I am a witch. So in that sense, I have that perspective as a person who has been following that path for a while. But the magic that we're talking about here is a more of I want to say a personal experience kind of way that you can bring great things into your life, or hopefully bring great things into your life by doing certain things to kind of get you on your own path. What kind of magic works for you? So in that sense, we're not talking about magic so much the way a witch would practice it, but just all of these different things, some of them of which are psychological in nature as well. They're not exactly just, new age per se. There's kind of a mix of things, because different things will work for different people and their different mindsets. And so this book probably would appeal even to some people that might otherwise have said, that feels a little too weird to me.
Right. Like, do I have to get some candles out?
Right.
I'll say at the outset, this is a relatively non-weird book. I mean, all kinds of stuff in it. It's things that everybody would be familiar with.
Right.
And I read it and I thought, this is just a reframing.
And a rediscovery, because I know I was feeling like, life is it's like Groundhog Day every day, and I didn't like that. And I thought, to me, that magic is the awe and wonder that you felt as a kid, as a child, when everything was new. We're so cynical, we're so jaded, we've been through it all, we've seen it all. And I just felt like, God, I really miss going outside and looking at a butterfly and just being like, wow, And I do that now with my dogs. I watch them chase butterflies, and it's like, I could do this for hours. So it's that kind of magic, that awe and that wonder and that just sort of expansiveness that I think so many people today are not feeling and not experiencing, because they're so focused on making a living and taking care of the kids, and if you're a sandwich generation, which I am, taking care of parents, and there's not a real priority for feeling everyday magic.
And what makes it every day?
I think it's actually, I think for me personally, just for my own edification, is that, going back for a minute to that, what kind of personal experiences did I have growing up that I felt were either kind of magical in that, as Marie was saying, you get used to being an adult and all those things that go with it, and you forget some basic things that you really enjoyed or that you still could enjoy. And so really, when you look at the different subject matters that we talk about in here, as we, each chapter being about something in particular that's different, that we even talk about people and concepts that have actually been around a really long time, and people that we mention in the book are going to be familiar to a lot of people. And some of those, in some ways, it's saying, hey, there's some old stuff in here that maybe you've never heard before, or that you've never taken seriously, that let's tell you about it. And then we're personally, each of us going to say, here's our experience with that particular concept, whatever it is. But we also bring in new stuff. So it's kind of what's the new stuff and what's the old stuff that you might rediscover to help you feel better about a lot of different things. And I love the idea that, because I know when I read a book and I feel like the author is somebody who I can relate to, hopefully putting our own stuff in here doesn't make us just seem like an expert who's telling you this is the way it is, and
Right. Yeah.
that's what I like about that.
Yeah. And I feel like every single day, if you're, there have been a long period of time where I felt like I'm just getting up, going through the motions and going to bed, repeat. So this is our way of trying to encourage people to slow down, take a look around, like you said, reframe, change your perception a little bit, because even in the most mundane things, you can find that sort of magical moment. Washing the dishes gives you a chance to maybe kind of get zen a little, meditate a little, or, going out and doing yard work, getting out in nature. But I think the struggle is so real for so many people that we go through the motions and we don't stop long enough to see there's these little magical things that are all around us.
Yep.
I noticed that your starting place was self-love.
Yeah, it's got to start there. If you don't like yourself or love yourself or respect yourself, nothing else matters. It's like that's foundational, I think. I mean, I know I've found that in my own life because I've struggled with addiction and codependency and all kinds of weird stuff. And it took a long, long time for me to realize, wow, I'm not happy because I don't love myself. And that reflects outward to everything that you do.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that was a little scary for me in writing this book when we said we were going to give our own personal stories is that I had to be willing to do one thing that I almost have never done most of my life. I've constantly been very good at being whoever I was at the moment for the situation and for the time that I needed to do whatever it is I needed to do. Which plays really well in a sense, but it also doesn't reflect necessarily internally what you've got going on as a person, just because you're good at being whatever you are on the outside. And so what was challenging for me in this book, and that I fully admit, is talking about things that I was a little bit hesitant of, okay, you're kind of letting some things hang out there, or, people are either, if they don't know me and they read this book, maybe they're going to be a little shocked, or if they're not shocked, are they going to be like, wow, And so that I really felt, once we got done with this, I felt good about it because I was like, okay, that's a part of loving yourself. Really, if you think about it, if you can talk about this stuff and say, hey, this is the real me.
Yeah.
And when you can't say this is the real me, usually it means you're definitely not, having that self-love concept happening at all. So it's good for me in that way, for sure.
Oh, I think we totally lived the book as we went along. And, a lot of stuff was like re-experiencing it and starting with self-love and ending with death, which, believe it or not, has so much magic to offer us, not death necessarily, but the awareness of death. And yeah, there were a lot of things like Denise said where I'm like, wow, I never really made that connection. But this is the everyday magic of connection or relationship or what have you. And also, I mean, we both agreed, we both knew when we were writing it that if we weren't going to be authentic with the readers, that's such a turnoff. I've read a lot of spiritual self-help books where there was a disconnect between the author and me, the reader. And then I've read some where, it's like you're sitting there having coffee. And I think that's kind of the mood that we really wanted to set. Like, hey, we're really good friends. We're going to have a nice talk here. And we're just going to lay it out on the table and be real.
Yeah.
That does come through.
Good.
You had some concepts in here I found very interesting. The notion of making deposits into your well-being.
Yeah.
Usually last priority on a woman's list, right?
Yeah.
Boy. Yeah, I've found that out lately. I caretake for my mom. She has dementia. And I'm exhausted and and so my health started suffering. And I found myself getting back in that trap of get up, go through the day, go to bed. And it's like if I don't start adding, making deposits into the bank of me, I have nothing to offer anybody else. But I mean, not only that, but I do have a life. And I want that life to be fulfilling and magical. So, yeah, but it's funny. I mean, I think I meet a lot of men that are kind of talking about how they don't feel comfortable working on themselves. But I do think it's a lot more of a burden for women.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, psychologically, we're kind of trained from childhood. And I think, of course, obviously, we're talking about our particular generation because Marie and I are very close in age and stuff. So we're coming from that aspect of people who are that age group. But I think there's a lot of young women as well now who are getting the same message. And unfortunately, even after all this time, that we have to do extra special things to be accepted that men do not have to do. And so I think it was good to point that out in the book as well and hopefully though, there are men who can read this and say, man, this is kind of giving me permission to get a little more into that part of myself and be more authentic as well.
Yeah, I agree.
You do talk a lot about nature, which makes that one, I think, is not a stretch for people to see that there's a connection there. You talk a lot about the impact of our indoor lifestyle and the notion of an outside mindset. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I think for me, and I think I want to become more of an expert at that, honestly, because I'm a weirdo in that I love to be in the house a lot. And it's like nature is out there and I appreciate it, but I have to actually force myself to go out in it. It's like, I love, there's certain types of nature that if once I'm in there, I grew up in a pine forest, a huge pine forest. And so I was surrounded by trees. And so I love trees and mountains and all of that. I grew up in Colorado, but I have to keep reminding myself to go out there and experience it because I'm just such an introvert that it's like, I know it's out there, but
me too.
So that was a stretch for me to actually say, these are the things that I appreciate about it because I do, but I don't think about it that much. So I had to think about it more.
Well, what impact do you think an indoor lifestyle has on our ability to experience magic? Is it a dampener maybe, or?
What do you think, Ray? Because I'm going to say,
well, I think one of the problems with the indoor lifestyle is that, first of all, we're breathing indoor air, which is really not good for us. And I think what we're doing is we're putting ourselves in a bubble. And if we don't every now and then go out and remind ourselves that there is this vast, gorgeous, amazing world that is so full of abundance of leaves and grass and birds, we forget how big and magical and expansive our own world can be. But I mean, I'm a lot like Denise. I'm a writer. I'm always inside, and having two dogs now, I get outside a lot more. And every time I do, it's like, oh my God, just standing in the sun. The other day I was standing in the sun and I thought, just melt away everything that is not me. Like I have all these layers of stuff that I've built on from, other people and childhood and parents and society. And it's like the sun just felt like, oh, it could just melt away everything, all the layers that I have put upon the real me. And it was just such a weird, profound little thought.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, and I live in the Arizona, so during the summer, I have a tendency to stay inside more because it's so hot.
Yeah.
I love the fall and the winter. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there are some readers who are going to sit here and relate to that. Probably more people liking summer, but I'm totally like, if it's winter and it's cold, my personality, when I go outside, I thrive in that for a very strange reason. I have no idea why, but so just going out and being in nature that you appreciate, the kind that you really resonate with, I think is not only good for the creativity, but it just, if it fits your mood and it fits who you are, that's something only going to help, and it's going to expand things for you.
Yeah. Good for the soul.
Yep.
Well, I think this is a good place for us to take our break. So hang on, everyone. We have lots more to talk about. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Times TV.
Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again? empowermentunlimited.net.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with Denise A. Agnew and MarieDJones, authors of the new book, Everyday Magic. And we were touching briefly on nature just before the break. And I wanted to ask, what is forest bathing and what does it have to do with magic?
That is a Japanese concept of going out in the forest and just being in the moment, in the now, present moment, and just losing yourself to the natural world. And the Japanese people are very driven, very business focused, and they began to realize that if they didn't do this, they were living lives that were very unbalanced. And not all of us maybe have a forest nearby, but you could go into a woods. Like we have hiking. I live in San Diego. We have hiking trails. We have the beach. But it's just the idea of being around the green and the lushness of a forest, the sounds, the smells, and just bathing in it like you would, taking a bath and letting it, again, melt away the problems and stresses of the day.
Yeah, there was something that reminds me of, didn't put it in this book because I didn't have the person that I got this information from. I wasn't able to contact her because I lost touch with her. But she was a police officer in Toledo, Ohio, and she ended up founding this program where they would take kids who are juvenile delinquents and take them into the forest, literally, places of nature and forest, and not just, trek them through there for no reason, but they would do exercises and things with them. And I forget a lot of the stuff that she told me about exactly what they did. But what she discovered is they introducing them to the nature and then also actually giving them books to read, which was another component of that, a little bit different, that the more that they spent time in nature and the more that they actually read fiction or nonfiction, depending on what they wanted to read, some of those kids turned completely around. It was something that was the thing that they needed in order to stop doing whatever it was that was getting them into trouble. And I thought that was fascinating. And I thought that's something a lot of places, if they could do that with juvenile delinquents, I'm sure that they would be able to turn some of that around for those kids.
Yeah.
You do address universal laws, many of which people are going to be familiar with, but one I want to ask about that isn't one that gets trotted out all the time is the law of assumption.
I am a Neville Goddard devotee.
Yeah,
I was so into Goddard's teachings maybe 30 years ago, and then kind of, forgot all about it. In the last year with YouTubes, I started finding them in my YouTube scroll. And I remember seeing a quote that just blew me away where he said, the whole vast world is you pushed out. And it was like, da, 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 this huge light bulb went off. That if I assume people and the world around me to be a certain way, that is what will manifest. So it's me in here being pushed outward. And I study it every day, trying to wrap my mind around it. And it really, I think, a lot of the other laws, reciprocity, the law of attraction, they all say the same thing in general, that what's going on in here is going to be magnified, amplified, manifested out here. So I just love his teachings.
definitely.
You talked about two different kinds of jars, one of which I've played with, and I hadn't heard of the other one before. So would you talk about the gratitude moment jar, and also how's that different from a kindness jar?
I think it's interesting because I hadn't really heard about that myself quite as much. I think it was something that you had brought up, Marie, because what I like about the gratitude part of it is I had taken a couple of courses with a particular individual who also believed in the law of assumption and those kind of concepts. And she was trying to get us to think about what it is every single day that we have our gratitude filled for. Or in my case, I love it when I talk about, what is the word I want to use? Not saying gratitude so much, but saying what are the things that you are looking forward to having happen today, or also adding in stuff. So I think sometimes gratitude has that stickiness to it where it feels like, you're not being you're not being very grateful, this thing that's in front of you that you're happy for. But if you're just picking out something like, I'm trying to think of a real silly way of putting it, but I'm happy that I have this pink pen, that I love pink pens, and I'm grateful to have it. So what you're doing is you're throwing in it doesn't even have to be in a jar, honestly, it could be in a journal, and saying any little thing that you might think that's, I don't know, inconsistent or not inconsistent, but insignificant, but you love it. I love this purple pen. I love this pink journal that I have, whatever. You're already putting out immediately that this is something that you have that's good. Yeah, look at that, a purple pen, right? I mean, I've got a whole bunch of these pens that are in this color, But anyway, I made a hash of that explanation for that, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
Saying,
I mean, yeah, you could have a jar for anything, right?
honestly, you could.
Random acts of kindness. I think the idea is it gently forces you to think about one thing every day that you could put in that jar, that you appreciated, that you were grateful for. And then to later, maybe at the end of the year, I mean, you could make a little ritual out of it, to empty the jar and read through and just, feel a sort of renewed appreciation, but also a lot of those things will probably have manifested into something even bigger. So a lot of people do a law of attraction jar, things that intentions that they want to fulfill. Kindness. Did you offer anybody a kindness today? Did somebody offer you a big, small, doesn't matter? And then later being able to read through them and appreciate, when you're feeling like life sucks, to be able to reappreciate, I don't think that's a real word, but the good things that happen every day, the little tiny magical things that you probably forget about a week later until you look through the jar.
I like that you have, quite differently here, change the topic slightly. There's scientific data in a lot of the chapters. I find it really, really interesting that there's a chemical release, a measurable chemical release when you help someone. So were there any things that particularly struck you in your research as you were putting all this together? Because I think the scientific pieces help a certain mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Come along and go, oh, yeah, all right.
Yeah. I think, my father was a scientist. I grew up with that mindset. And I think for me, like you said, there's the intellectual part of you that will prove it. I want to see it on paper. And I think Denise and I both have that mindset of, we don't want this just to be our ideas. We want to show that a lot of this stuff really affects our physiology, our psychology, our behavior, the serotonin and dopamine and all these different hormones that get released. And showing somebody kindness makes us feel good. Well, guess what? There's a scientific biological reason why we feel good in that moment. And we can have more of that too. So I think it was kind of important for us both to add in. We didn't want to add too much because then it would feel like a textbook.
Right.
But I think it was important that we had peppered that through.
Right. How does that tie into magic?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Again, my father was a geophysicist. There's so much magic in science. It's mind-blowing. I mean, these are people that look at how the world is made and how it works. And let me tell you something, my dad really became a very spiritual human being from studying physics, because it's like, this is so awesome. There's a structure and a fundamental nature and patterns, and it's like the master magician put this all together. So yeah, I mean, I think it's part of the metaphysical. Metaphysical just simply means beyond the physical.
Yeah.
But I put it in that terminology because the children's author Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote A Wrinkle in Time and a lot of other books, used to say that she thought physicists were contemporary theologians.
A lot of them believe in God, or whatever God of their belief, not necessarily a Christian God. And a lot of them have found, like my dad, it was never growing up, never religious. And the more that he was a geophysicist, a seismologist, and he also had a background in astrophysics. Total believer in UFOs, by the way, which is where I got my love of UFOs. But he became so spiritual. And I know I've read other physicists' books and seen quotes where they say you can't look at the fundamental level of reality and not become spiritual or even religious to some extent.
Yeah, I think I think one thing that I was, excuse me, that I was thinking of while you were talking about the geophysics part of it is I know I had an experience one time when I went to Volcano National Monument. My hubby and I went there, and I had never been in any place that was disturbing, I guess, in a way that actually just kind of made you feel like you were on the edge of something.
Yeah.
And being, near volcanoes, of which there are quite a few there in Volcano National Monument in the Big Island of Hawaii. And I thought maybe I was just a crazy person because I always felt like I was kind of buzzing, while I was there, like there was this, and I was talking to a friend of mine many years after that, and I didn't mention it to her. She mentioned it to me. She says, "Oh,
Yeah.
when I was there, I just kind of felt like I was edgy and I could feel this,
The
like,
energy,
the energy, whatever." Yeah. And I said, okay. And so I think that goes right back to the nature part as well, is that it has a lot of influence on us. And I would think, obviously, your father knowing all of those different things, he would have been aware of that, I'll bet.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a lot about the Goldilocks principle and how the ability for a planet to originate and sustain life is so mind-blowingly complex and small. The odds are so small that there feels like there's some kind of magic or mastermind behind it. Consciousness, my dad was really into studying consciousness. And I think that for scientists, a lot of them, the more that they look at science, whatever it is, the more that they keep going deeper and deeper and deeper till they get to a point where it's almost impossible to avoid the idea that there is some force or some generative, creative, fundamental force at work here. And to me, that's magical. And can we align with that? Can we work with it? I think that leads into the universal laws, which at their heart have some scientific basis to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it also segues into, you have a chapter on miracles. I always like to, I mean, things I've been accused of living in a fairy tale. All right. Like, which I'd say is probably true, because I do find magic all over the place all the time. And I see coincidences that can't be. I'm always making connections.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
utterly delightful to me. What do you see as miracles? Oh, I know what I'm always saying. What are the odds? Like you couldn't
life.
What are the odds?
I mean, that we're here, that the sperm and the egg met and here we are. Life is, even in its darkest moments, that we sort of beat these incredible odds just to be here. But miracles can be something like, I have a friend who just beat stage 4 colon cancer, just using his mind. That's a miracle. Yet he said to me, don't be fooled. I'm not special. This is something we can all do. And you're saying, Kathy, that people kind of tease you for living in a fairy tale world, but
they can say that
you're happy. I wonder, if they would be happier if they did too. So I think it's a matter of perspective. Mm-hmm. But I don't envy the people that don't see miracles or look at anything in life as not being a miracle.
Well, and I think it also too, depending on how you're brought up, I think that can have such a huge impact on what you believe. Obviously, is really out there, and like Marie was saying, we both kind of have a skeptical bent in a lot of ways. Even though we write about all this kind of crazy stuff in different ways, fiction and nonfiction, there's always a little thread of us that's like, maybe, and so I think
where's the science?
Let's not go too far outside. But on the other hand, we're always reaching for the stuff that's we're willing to keep our minds open about the stuff.
Yeah.
And
Open-mindedness. Yeah.
yeah, and to me, the miracle part of some of that is if you are absolutely certain that everything is bunk, hokum, whatever kind of word you want to use, then you won't see those miracles at all.
Right.
So you absolutely have to be willing to say, okay,
Yeah.
I'll
How
keep
do I want to look at the world?
right.
Was it Einstein who said either you look at everything
Oops, she froze.
in the universe as benevolent me? But I think you guys know which one I'm talking about, where you have two ways that you can look at the world. Either as everything is benevolent and for me, or everything is against me. And, take your, I think we waver between the two a lot, and that's perfectly normal. But, I think people either lean positive or lean negative.
Right.
So,
yeah, and it's nice. I think in this book we've also kind of put ourselves out there as human. Again, we're not trying to tell people this is the only way to get this answer, or whatever. We're just saying, hey, this is what we've experienced, and
it worked for us.
Yeah, it worked for us, and share those little miracles that it might be a small one, but it's like the light bulb going on, in a certain situation can be a huge miracle. If there's something you hadn't made a connection to, that now you can do so.
Yeah. You mentioned death.
Yeah.
What's the magic of death? I mean, I've got lots of theories on this, but
that was kind of a last minute addition, right? We were like, did we cover everything? And I was like, you know what? There is magic in, and again, I mean, we're not just talking about you die in the afterlife, that. I think a lot of it is more, what does the specter of death offer you in terms of living more deeply while you're alive? How can you use that as a catalyst? And I just thought it was natural that we included it. And there's cultures all over the world that celebrate death as nothing more than, a passage to another way of being. So we're not really like that in the West, but I think it's got its purpose.
Yeah, that is certainly, as a medium, one of the things that I've learned. I've learned a lot since that light bulb got turned on in me, that's what I'd been doing since I was a little kid, because it took me until like 2018 before I figured that out, believe it or not. And so that piece of it for me, what was great about it was being able to see things from a different perspective of me encountering people who have passed on and seeing from their point of view. And being able to connect with them, I think, helped me a lot as well. I benefited from it. And then, doing readings has really it's been gratifying to me to be able to give people messages and have them see that that person is okay on the other side. And it doesn't matter what their circumstances were, how they passed, any of that. And so that was something that I mentioned in the book, simply because I think there's still a lot of people saying, that, something bad happened to them, and are they okay?
Right. They'll be punished or
they're going to be punished for how they passed or whatever.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So. I mean, it is the great equalizer. So you can either look at it as being a terrifying thing that obsesses you until you get to the day you die, or wow, you don't have a limited time here. What do I want to do? But also the afterlife and people that have near-death experiences and sort of the mystery and the magic of what might be on the other side. That's kind of cool.
Well, I'd like to end with how you end your book, which in a sense is, I read, okay, this is like burying the lead. Everyday magic is right where you are, you say. The energy of joy and bliss that occurs when we are true to the wonders of the world around us that we ordinarily ignore or don't see because we're too busy working or on our phones or stressing out over some past or future events. There's your definition of magic. And you say
Yeah.
magic only requires awareness, attention, mindfulness, and intention.
Yeah. You don't need the rabbit and the top hat or
Yeah.
Well, if you want a top hat, I wouldn't talk somebody out of it.
I actually kind of like the top hat. Yeah, it really is just a sort of a call to rediscover some of the fun, magical ways that we were before we got so jaded and cynical.
Mhm.
Looking at the world with the eyes of wonder.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like real quick, because I know we're, crunched for time, but I started collecting things that I had not gotten as a kid that I wanted as a toy. And I literally started buying some toys that I had missed out on somehow as a kid, and it's really amazing how uplifting that was to be able to open the box, whether I put it under the tree for myself or told my husband, I want this toy for Christmas, spirograph, whatever, there's some other things. And it was just like somebody had fixed something in me that had been missing because I wanted that toy that I didn't get.
You wanted that experience of playing with spirograph.
Spirographs are like magic in action.
Yeah.
They're like Fibonacci sequences. Like, how can this be? They're amazing.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was what I was doing until I did it. I thought I was being kind of crazy and silly wanting these toys. And then I just said, I'm going to do it anyway. And I was like, wow, that felt really good.
This is fun. Yeah,
this is fun.
How cool.
I'm a big fan of that kind of thing. I have a huge toy collection. I have
there
every
you
book
go. See,
from my childhood I still own.
Awesome.
And many. I have many.
I have my Grogu bobblehead on my my son got me that. Yeah, it's being a kid again while you're being an adult. I think that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, I'm turning into a 3-year-old again.
Nothing wrong with that. One thing real quick, do you have any personal favorites of all of these different topics in the book? Are there ones that are kind of your go-to, like?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question.
I think for me, the right now in my life, the idea of acceptance, which I think brings grace. Gratitude, I think I'm getting better at. Nature, I'm getting better at. Passion and purpose, I think Denise and I have always had that.
Well, yeah, and creativity and imagination, because that's not something that I think a lot of people think about, because some people think they're not creative. Yeah. So that one means a lot to me for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I thank you very, very much. Where can people find you and your book?
Well, they can find me at DeniseAAgnew.com. And they can find me also at agnewcreativemedium.com. Those are my two major websites.
And Marie, what about you?
I'm at MarieDJones.com. And the book is available everywhere books are sold. It's in print and digital and possibly audio. I haven't checked, but eventually it will be an audio if it isn't already.
Okay, and it's Visible Ink Press, and the name of the book again is Everyday Magic: How to Live a Mindful, Meaningful, Magical Life. Right?
It is.
Excellent. Well, I thank you very, very much for spending time, and I think we've had a technology miracle that we're doing this during Mercury retrograde.
There you go.
And it perversely is working. I've just now doomed the end of the show. Thanks, everybody. Remember that you can find my forecasts at empowermentunlimited.net and also at omtimes.com, which also has my How to Handle a Mercury Retrograde in 2024 guide and my Forecasts and other information are also on the Professional Aquarian YouTube channel. Look for a video called Engines of Change, and I discuss in that video how the astrology of August 19th, the complexities, how they hit the US chart and the charts of every of both presidential tickets. So that's something quite fun to listen to. So thanks, everybody. Remember that Mercury is going to be going direct. Give yourself some extra time towards the end of the month. And lots of big stuff coming in September. Always, we don't seem to be getting a break, but we're through the wackiest part of August for now. So everyone be safe. And thank you again, Denise and Marie, very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.